Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today for a special live screening of A Tennessee Waltz, Ray Blanton's Last Dance, a WVLT documentary that we have been working on over the past several years. And we're so thrilled that you're joining us today. Today is a very special day in connection to this story because on this day, December 15th, 1978 was the day the FBI raided the Tennessee State Capitol building, and 3 Blanton aides were all arrested, all accused in their role in the pay for pardon scheme. We're going to break all of that down, tell you exactly what that means. But December 15th, today, is the 40-year anniversary of a very important piece of this story. Again, we're going to break all of that down. First, want to say thank you for all of the feedback, the questions, your engagement in this story, and most of all, your support of this story. We are truly so overwhelmed by your feedback with this story that we're really excited to announce to you today. We are thrilled, we are proud, and most of all, humbled that this story, A Tennessee Waltz, has been nominated for 3 Emmy Awards. That is brand new news. So we're very, very excited about that. And of course, we'll keep you posted on any potential progress that this story makes at this awards ceremony. But the purpose of today mainly is to answer your questions, to talk about your stories. If you remember a piece of this story, we want to hear about it. We want to answer questions, any points of clarification with the story. We're going to break down all the behind the scenes, the research, some of the engagement that we had with the FBI. We want you to know everything that went into the story, and we have a lot of brand new content for you that is just now getting released. So we are very, very excited for you to see all of that. We have new VR experiences that you're going to be able to see for the very first time. Before we want to show you the story, the Tennessee Waltz, we named it this for a very specific reason, because I think when you consider what it takes to pull off a perfect dance, it's 2 people coming to the table with 2 different opposing even perspectives, but when they work together, they can create a perfect dance, or in this case, a Tennessee Waltz. So in this story, your dance partners are Tennessee Democrats and Tennessee Republicans in the late 1970s. And with that, we'll get started on A Tennessee Waltz.
Ray Blanton, a target of a federal investigation.
Governor Ray Blanton either had knowledge of or participated in a scheme in the governor's office to sell pardons to state prisoners, including 26 murderers.
How much money would this one cost, and how much money would that one cost? People were paying cash for their release.
These people were buying their way out of prison, and I knew it.
You haven't sold a single one.
There's a promise of a really big payday. How much would it cost to get Ray out? James Earl Ray, who is in prison for killing Martin Luther King.
Are you going to be signing any commutations tonight?
Well, that remains to be seen.
His 99-year sentence for first-degree murder commuted by Governor Ray Blanton.
It was like tossing a match in a can of gasoline.
The governor's office was involved in the killing of one of the people who knew the most about the pardon and parole scandal. And what the hell are you going to do about it? And I said, you don't want to know.
It's one of Tennessee's most notorious scandals. Inmates released from prison because they had the money to pay. It's a story more than 4 decades old, but it's rarely talked about because those involved have rarely talked about it. In a way that's never been done before, we shed light on how political differences were erased to end one of the state's most corrupt chapters.
You raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give this hearing to be the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. I do.
No matter how deeply buried under layers of lies.
Would you state your name for the record and your official title?
I'm Eddie Sisk, and I'm legal counsel to the governor.
The truth.
Why? Why'd you do it?
Almost always comes out.
Temptation of all that money.
It was a cold day in Nashville, and I was writing my acceptance speech, and the phone rang about noon.
I remember distinctly the day I got to work early, and I was just walking the hallways thinking about this case.
That Governor Ray Blanton either had knowledge of or participated in a scheme in the governor's office to sell pardons to state prisoners. Last month.
To this day, then U.S. Attorney Hal Hardin and Governor-elect Lamar Alexander try not to think about January 17th, 1979. But it's a hard day to forget.
I decided that I would call Lamar.
The secretary said, Hal Hardin wants to talk with you.
I'm not calling you as the United States Attorney. I'm calling you as a Tennessean who's got some knowledge that I think you need to know.
Governor Blanton's promised to pardon at least 6 other inmates.
Blanton was considering other unapproved releases.
Governor Blanton was about to release from custody some prisoners who were the subject of a federal grand jury investigation.
There have been federal charges. Blanton's administration took bribes for the pardons.
He said, Lamar, I'm calling as a citizen to ask you to take office early. The FBI has evidence that Governor Blanton is about to release a large number of prisoners who paid cash to obtain their release, including one big name, he said.
A long life, longevity has its place.
Some people speculated that might be James Earl Ray, who is in prison for killing Martin Luther King.
The apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
And so I set about spending the entire afternoon trying to think about how can we accomplish this coup in a way that's most appropriate. It's never been done before in our country, so far as I know.
My beautiful wife.
4 years ago today, January 18th, 1975, Ray Blanton becomes governor of Tennessee. On that day, almost no one would have believed his administration would end so abruptly in scandal and disgrace. After all,
Governor Ray Blanton's time in office from 1975 to 1979 was filled with scandal from the start.
It is doubtful history will be kind to the one-term governor.
The FBI became interested just as soon as Blanton and his crowd took office. There was trouble all through the Department of Transportation, highway construction project bid rigging.
I don't want to discuss cases with you. They'll be on record and they'll be on file.
There was a saying at that time that anything that wasn't tacked down was for sale in the state. Liquor license allegations and even real estate license.
He had barely gotten into office, and already they're asking him questions about these dirty tricks, that kind of stuff. So there was a lot of distrust from the very first.
Blanton blamed it all on personal animosity, especially among members of the news media.
Blanton was sort of a low-level political operative. And in 1972, when Senator Howard Baker took a campaign train across the state, we had pretty good evidence that Blanton and his allies had tried to grease the tracks with Crisco to make the train run off the tracks. Now, that sounds kind of ridiculous, but I'm pretty sure it was true.
By 1977, the FBI was investigating Blanton's administration for selling state-owned cars. But spinning violently at the center of this tornado of trouble were rumors surrounding the pardon and parole system.
Blanton says he was only doing what other governors have done.
This stuff was coming out about these names, these characters. They're going into the system, and now there's movement to start to try to get them out by other than the normal legal process. It was by the payment of money.
As governor, Blanton had sole power to issue clemency to prisoners, a common act to release inmates deemed rehabilitated, and a done deed once the governor's name is signed on the paperwork.
It was nothing short of brazen arrogance for the governor.
But the question under this administration, were the inmates ready to be released?
Acting on the excuse of relieving overcrowded conditions in the prison.
Or did pardons and commutations come for a price?
It has now spawned an ever-widening federal investigation.
There was some skullduggery going on, that the FBI had information that maybe even people were paying cash for their release.
We're going, it's not, this isn't possible. It just, and if it was possible, nobody would have the gall to do something like that.
Talk of questionable releases became more than just rumor, starting with Roger Humphreys.
It only seemed to get more sticky for the governor at every turn.
In 1975, the Johnson City man was convicted of killing his ex-wife and her friend John Skoll 2 years prior.
He shot them repeatedly at close range, reloading his pistol 8 times.
He even confessed to the murders. Sentenced to 20 to 40 years in prison at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, a place housing the state's most dangerous criminals. But he wouldn't serve nearly that much time.
It transpired that Roger Humphreys' father was a political friend of Governor Blanton.
Roger Humphreys, the son of a former Blanton patronage chief.
Governor Blanton had said he was going to pardon Roger Humphreys, who was from Johnson City and who had killed his former wife and her lover with a 2-shot Derringer by shooting them a dozen times, which means he had to reload 6 times in order to do it. And Blanton had said he was a nice young man, he was going to pardon him. That created a big storm.
Less than 2 months after his sentencing, a reporter spotted Humphreys, not behind bars, but unattended, taking pictures on Capitol grounds.
First, Blanton gave him a cushy state photographer's job, even though Humphreys had been behind bars just a few months.
Paying him $100 a month and arranged for him to have a state car.
And we had photos of Roger Humphreys out on the state Capitol steps with his camera. He had a credit card, he had a state job. It was fairly amazing.
That led into a major and long-running controversy about what was going on.
There were problems in that administration, and Roger Humphreys became sort of the poster boy of a profound problem.
And all of a sudden, he is out taking photographs. This became a scandal, even a national scandal.
I'm an elected politician. I have the authority. I have the trust of the people that elected me.
Blanton rejected any wrongdoing.
And it's all part of the political process.
Buckling down on his decision to let Humphreys out of his cell to take pictures for the state photographer's office.
That there would be no parole supervision or restrictions on most.
And the night I had the Roger Humphreys story, all hell broke loose in terms of the Blanton administration calling WSM and saying the governor wants to come to the studio and do an interview with Carol Marine in the studio live.
Thank you for coming, Governor.
It's a pleasure.
First and foremost, the case of Roger Humphreys, serving 20 to 40 years for murder.
During the interview with Carol Marine, he promised Humphreys would be released from prison before serving his full sentence.
He merited this, and I'm going to announce to you now that before I go out of office, he's going to be pardoned.
Can you explain that decision, Governor?
Very simply. I feel like he merited it.
I say to Blanton, he's a convicted double murderer. And he said, well, he hasn't killed anybody since he got out of prison.
At one point during the interview, unprompted, he denied paroles were up for sale.
We haven't sold a single one. I don't know whether previous administrations can say that or not, but we haven't.
This was the beginning of what was called the clemency for cash scandal.
The interview sparked a firestorm of headlines and a petition to collect 1 million signatures, urging Blanton to keep Humphreys behind bars.
Let me explain it to you simple enough where you can understand it. Vocational aptitude, ability, trustworthiness, and the fact that he's performed. Now, can you understand that?
He came to WSM to lynch me, and ultimately he lynched himself.
He hasn't murdered anyone. He hasn't run off.
He murdered 2 people before he came to prison.
Since he's been in prison. He has not. I think that Roger Humphreys is an outstanding, fine young man, and I intend to pardon him before I leave office.
Around the time Roger Humphreys' seemingly favorable treatment was making headlines, Marie Rejanti, a 33-year-old appointed chair of the State Pardon and Paroles Board in 1976, was the first to come forward with special insight on suspected corruption within the administration. saying the governor's legal counsel, Eddie Sisk, and other top aides pinned pardons and commutations up for sale with a list of names, including Humphreys.
He got a job right away, and he was granted, he could go out during the day, didn't even have to stay in prison. And there were just things like that going on willy-nilly, and I began to challenge them. I became convinced that there was only one thing to do, and I did it. Which was to go to the FBI.
We were hearing rumors, and then kind of Marie put a little bit more, we had a little bit more confidence that something was going on that would deserve some investigation.
And then I began to think about other controversial cases, and some of these people had been granted clemency, and when I saw the full correctional file, I was aghast because it was clear to me that some of those people should have never been released. These people were buying their way out of prison, and I knew it.
Billy Cole was another guy who he came up early in the investigation because they got him out almost right away.
Billy Cole was serving a 25-year prison sentence for armed robbery, suspected of cutting a $10,000 deal to get out, despite being the suspect of a double murder.
So, here's somebody that we thought didn't need to be on the street.
Court records suggest Cole worked with Sisk, approaching inmates who were willing to pay money to get out of prison, including murderer Jimmy Pendleton, accused of trying to arrange a $5,000 deal to get out on time served, but was rejected when he didn't have the money to pay.
It was offensive, very offensive to us.
Marie continued feeding information to the FBI without the board knowing it, until, she says, Sisk fired her without reason from her position as chair.
That I was saying about looking in the mirror, can you live with yourself? And I could. I knew I had done my best and what I believed was right.
Coming up, blood on the hands of the Blanton administration as thousands of dollars is paid for the promise of freedom, and growing fears that Martin Luther King's killer could get out next.
There's a promise of a really big payday.
Some people speculated that might be James Earl Ray.
He was paid by former Tennessee Governor Ray Blanton's administration to kill Petty John.
He said $20,000, and I can give you the date he'll be released.
Why did I get involved? Temptation of all that money.
Thanks again, everybody, for being with us for this special screening of A Tennessee Waltz, Ray Blanton's last dance. Today, again, is a really important piece of this story because today is the 40-year anniversary of the FBI raid on the Tennessee State Capitol building. We are going into that part of the story a little deeper here in just a few minutes, but the purpose of today is to answer questions that you may have, and we want to hear your stories, your memories of this time in Tennessee history. So if you don't mind, just put your questions in the comments here. Let me refresh on this page just to make sure that I'm not leaving anybody hanging. There's also a function, by the way, if you forget to ask a question, there is a way that you can do that on the website, and we'll show you how to navigate this page here in just a few minutes. But before we get rolling into the next piece of this story, I want to take you into the research process because we found this to be really exciting and unique, and I'd hate to think that you would miss out on part of this story that we don't always get to see, the behind the scenes, and particularly the research. And again, we researched the story for almost 2 years before we were able to put it together for you to see it. So first off, special thanks to a couple of people. Keel Hunt, he is the author of the book Coup, the Day Tennessee Democrats Ousted Their Governor and Replaced Him with a Republican. He was a huge piece of this story, and you see him there, and you're going to see him again. And then also the late FBI agent Hank Hillen, who wrote a book about his experience. He was the lead agent in this case. That book is called Operation 10 Par, and I encourage you, if you're interested in this story, to further investigate both of those books, as they are both fantastic and offer two different perspectives that are both equally important. So big thank you to both of those resources and to Keel Hunt for his help in this project. It was just tremendous. So a couple of things that we got to do. Of course, we're here in Knoxville. We got to go to Nashville for part of this research a couple different times. And this is really the thing that I just think is so unique. This is from the Tennessee State Libraries and Archives. This is the way that you are able to pull material that you're interested in researching. And I just thought this was so fascinating. Several stories, and who knows how many boxes deep of just material and history that we're able to access. And I just thought the process was really unique, so I wanted to give you an inside look on what this actually looked like and how they retrieved that content, original documents and letters and handwritten notes and a number of different pieces of material that we were able to research and use that you see here in the story. So it's just really unique, and big thank you to the folks there who helped us in retrieving this material that was certainly extensive, and as you can see here, just required a lot of time and some pictures that we got here. And this is really unique stuff, just original access, original documents. Those are handwritten notes there that you see the FBI as it was investigating, and that all is saved and preserved and is accessible for us as members of the public. So that was just a really cool experience, and you can see tables that they laid out for us. So a lot of different pieces of information that we were privileged to have access to and to try to bring to you as part of this story. So that was really fun and unique, and I just wanted you to see the behind the scenes. And then here in Knoxville also we have the East Tennessee Historical Society and Museum, which provided us with different material and really cool microfilm. It's been a minute since we've really seen microfilm in action, so we thought that that was just a unique addition to the visuals there, and we were able to pull up some old headlines and newspapers that ran back in the day when this story was making headlines. So wanted you to see what that process looked like too, as this is very well organized and well preserved in both places, and wanted you to get a look at what this process looked like, so you have a little bit more knowledge on the behind the scenes experience, which was just really fun for us as we were again researching this story and trying to pull it all together so that we made sure that we got it, first and foremost, that we got it right, that it was historically accurate, and just really as interesting as we could. There's so much to this story, but this was what it looked like as we were able to go back in history and see what this all looked like. It was really fun. All right, we're going to get to the next portion of this story, bring you more details, and then after this next segment, we have really new, exciting content that is different. It's a virtual reality experience that we're going to bring to you. I'm going to show you how you can navigate that in just a few minutes after we run the next portion of this story. But in the meantime, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I'm happy to answer any of those. And again, I'd love to hear your stories and your memories from this time in history. But I'll leave you with this next portion of the story.
While the cash for clemency scandal was catching the attention of the FBI, Lamar Alexander was hoping to catch the attention of Tennesseans.
I think the people can make their own judgment. I've got confidence in the intelligence of the voters.
The 38-year-old was on the campaign trail, trying to sway Tennesseans to vote a Republican into office as its next governor.
I literally walked across the state. I started in Maryville, walked to Mountain City, and I spent the night with 73 different families, most of whom I hadn't known before. It really helped me win the election and helped me be a better governor.
I think people have made their minds up based on sizing us up.
Alexander beat out the Democrat Jake Butcher from Knoxville by more than 100,000 votes. And without Blanton seeking re-election, Lamar Alexander would be Tennessee's 45th governor.
Alexander says the poll-taking, major campaign rallies.
As Alexander was preparing to take over office in a little more than a month, the FBI zeroed in even more on the Blanton administration and the mounting evidence of a cash for clemency scandal. FBI Special Agents Hank Hillen and Richard Knudsen were working the case, naming the investigation codename 10-PAR, accusing some of the men working for Blanton of using the governor's office as a criminal enterprise, arranging roughly $300,000 in bribes to reduce the sentences of nearly 20 prisoners. Or, for the right price, set them free.
These people were being contacted by, quote, representatives of the administration type thing, and that if money would be paid, why somebody could be gotten out. It was that type of situation.
I actually got a visit.
Defense attorney Jack Lowry was representing Will Midget, who was serving time for second-degree murder from a deadly car crash, when he got a visit at his office from a man who called himself Bob Roundtree.
And it was a Friday afternoon, kind of rain, and just about quitting time. This guy comes in, he's smoking a cigar, got on a flowery shirt. He said, I understand you've also applied for executive clemency. I said, yeah. So I think I can be of some help to you. I said, you can? He said, yes. And he stood up at that time and pulled out a lot of money out of his pocket. He said, I need to keep this conversation confidential, and I need to hire you as my lawyer. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, $20,000, and I can give you the date he'll be released, and he won't have to go to Florida. And when he said he won't have to go to Florida, I thought, oh, hell. He's had X. Nobody knew about that. It's in that report. Marie, Eddie, and me were the only people that I think at that time had seen my report. So about 7 o'clock that night, I called Marie Reggiani. I remembered, I've got her number. Called her home. I told her the story, and I won't ever forget what she said. I described the guy to her, told her what had happened. She said, oh my God, I don't know how high this goes.
It verifies to us that this situation is going to involve the highest part of the Tennessee state government.
That has now spawned an ever-widening federal investigation, and which is already...
We have several other people during the course of the investigation are telling us these things that are happening, and it always comes back to Eddie Sisk.
Eddie Sisk, the legal advisor to the governor on all matters, including pardons and clemencies, accused of lying to the Pardons and Paroles Board on several occasions to convince them to draw up paperwork to let prisoners out early. Prisoners like murderer Larkin Bibbs Jr., who admitted to paying $15,000 to get out after serving just 4 months of a 10 to 15-year prison sentence. And William Scharf on death row. The FBI says was told his death sentence could be reduced to 10 years for $45,000. Diamond rings, coin collections, and a grandfather clock, all used as alleged payment to stop armed robbers from being extradited to Georgia.
The money involved was $10,000 to get a friend or a loved one out of prison. There was one case that I remember where the amount of money involved was $90,000.
That's how greedy they were. That here comes the money, and he's gone.
Court records show Sisk tried to cut a deal with John Henry Gant for $20,000, a man serving time for first-degree murder for the shooting death of a 4-year-old girl.
I was working with the FBI, and they were sharing information with me about it. They were taking promissory notes on some of the releases of those prisoners. People couldn't pay. They were taking damn promissory notes, if you can imagine.
Commutation papers for dozens of inmates, several serving time for murder, were accused of paying between $2,000 and almost $100,000 in what was dubbed a release ring, or making their way to the governor's desk.
There was an abundance of evidence that this prisoner was involved in these discussions with these representatives of the conspiracy. I really think my case was the first test. I think they were going to test that situation with me because Eddie knew me.
Federal indictments were executed in a surprise announcement by the FBI, which made a raid on the state capitol building.
The FBI seemed to be taking everything they could get their hands on. The agents came prepared, carrying boxes to haul away documents pertaining to the pardons and parole system.
December 15th, 1978, the FBI raided the Capitol, arresting 3 Blanton aides, including Eddie Sisk, caught with marked $100 bills in his pocket.
Already seen 3 Blanton aides arrested and thousands of state records seized.
3 of Blanton's aides were indicted in the parole for pay scandal.
Mr. T. Edward Sisk was arrested.
Also arrested, Blanton bodyguard and Tennessee Highway Patrol Lieutenant Fred Taylor, the accused middleman between prospective buyers of clemency and Eddie Sisk.
Also, Charles Benson.
And extradition officer Charles Benson, who worked directly under Eddie Sisk. He was arrested just before boarding a flight at the Nashville airport, caught carrying clemency papers for Rusty Denton, who was serving 60 years for a triple murder out of Cocke County known as the Red Lantern Massacre. Convicted of opening fire at a nightclub early Christmas morning in 1975. The FBI says $85,000 was already paid to cut his 60-year sentence to 9, but agents feared another deal was on the table. For $40,000 more, he could be a free man.
The audacity that somebody is infamous as Rusty Denton, and here he is up for a commutation. Really bothered me.
In 1981, Eddie Sisk and Fred Taylor pled guilty to conspiring to sell clemencies to inmates, each sentenced to 5 years in prison.
Tennessee Highway Patrolman Charles Frederick Taylor, age 40, a 15-year veteran with the Highway Patrol stationed here in Nashville.
Why'd you do it? Get involved? Why did I get involved? Yeah. Temptation of all that money. I guess that's the thing I've never understood. You were carrying the badge at that time. I don't understand it either, dude. It's as hard as we'd all work. Various agencies together to get involved in it. I'm just curious what happened to you. I don't understand it either. I just fail with the temptation of the large amounts of money. I saw other people spending a lot of money and be a policeman with a policeman's salary, run around with a mental money. Just make sure you see Terry. I look back on it and try to figure out why the hell I did it. It's supposed to be stronger than that. And I always thought I was. I never took a quarter. Just tell him that. Never took a quarter in my life.
Charles Benson was acquitted.
He was just working there, and he did what Eddie told him to do. Eddie told him to get these documents signed. He testified that day that they were arrested, Fred had called back from Memphis and asked to speak to Charlie. And Fred says something to the effect that these documents are not signed and, the guy's not going to pay until the documents are signed. Charlie's position was Eddie was in the room and he handed Eddie the phone. Charlie, that's what Charlie testified to, that, it was the deal between Eddie and Fred.
Governor Blanton continued to deny any knowledge of the scheme. But the FBI was not convinced this was the end.
Chattanooga business owner Sam Pettyjohn was shot to death outside the club he owned on Market Street.
The governor's office was involved in the killing of one of the people who knew the most about the pardon and parole scandal.
In 2021, Blanton's office was connected to the murder of Samuel Pettyjohn, who was secretly providing information to the FBI.
This guy had been a really, good informant, had helped send people to us and stuff like that. So we're going, this thing's not ended yet.
He was paid by former Tennessee Governor Ray Blanton's administration to kill Pettyjohn.
There were 2 or 3 other mysterious murders during that period of time that's still, there's no answer for.
He was just one more person. We had several people, and I don't remember everybody, who had died prematurely or had been killed involved in this investigation.
Bob Roundtree, whose real name was William Aubrey Thompson, was convicted for his role in the parole buying scheme. He agreed to cooperate with the FBI under one condition. The FBI couldn't ask him about Petty John's murder.
It confirmed to me how pervasive and illegal and corrupt this was, how many people were involved, how much was at stake, and how deep it went.
Coming up, more than 50 prisoners, many of them murderers, are set free in the middle of the night, and Governor Blanton promises more are on the way. With concerns that Memphis's most famous killer could be set free, a secret plan goes in place to stop it.
He had granted executive clemency to another 52 prisoners, including 26 murderers.
His 99-year sentence for first-degree murder commuted.
Let's ask him about James Earl Ray, who kills Martin Luther King. How much would it cost to get Ray out?
Did you sign any papers tonight?
Sure did.
How many?
Could he empty the entire prison? He said yes.
And what the hell are you going to do about it? And I said, you don't want to know.
Hi again, everybody, and thanks for being with us for this special live screening of A Tennessee Waltz, Ray Blanton's Last Dance. And if you've been with us for just a couple of minutes, then you saw there in that piece of the story that today, December 15th, is a very important anniversary, as 40 years ago on this date, the FBI raided the state capitol building, and it became a very public story where people really started to understand and, in fact, confirm that there was concern that there was a scandal happening at the state level. You saw there several people arrested for their role and what they were accused of being their role in their involvement in the pay for pardon scandal back when this all started in 1978. So today's a really important day, which is why we are bringing the story back again, and we're answering your questions here on Facebook Live. And I was talking a bit with Vicki Sue Russell, who was sharing that she was young when this happened but didn't learn about it in school, which I think is a really interesting part of the story, because so many people who were involved in this story admittedly didn't really want to talk about it. So it kind of almost got forgotten there for a while until people are just now, thankfully, starting to talk about this important piece of Tennessee state history. So I promised you new extra content that it's really exciting and unique, because you can almost engage with us on virtual reality. So I'm going to show you something that is kind of fun to explore. If you haven't been to our landing page that we created specially for this story, then I certainly encourage you to do it, because there are a lot of fun and unique facts and little treats, if you will, plugged into this story. So here, I'm going to navigate this for you here. You can click on all of these bars, and we're going to get into this in just a few more minutes, but I want to quickly point your attention here to this virtual reality piece of the story that is brand new content. And you heard there that James Earl Ray's name, who of course is the man who killed Martin Luther King, was serving time at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary. His name is important because there was concern that he could be someone, because he had escaped, or at least tried to escape several times before this, that he could be someone who was released in this wave of prisoners who were paying to get out of prison. So there was a lot of concern and fear that James Earl Ray could be out on the streets. So what we did, Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary is not too far away from us in Knoxville, so we went over to where James Earl Ray's cell block was and got to explore a little bit about what this looked like. So we are bringing this to you in 360. I'm new to this, so you may need to help me out, Cameron. What you can do here, okay, there we go. You can click on this. It's going to pause for just a moment, but don't worry like I did. And then you can just drag and look anywhere you want to. And this here has a full 360 experience, and you can navigate wherever you want to go. So this is brand new. Just added this to the website today. So pretty cool here. And this also, you don't just have to do it on the website. You can also do this if you have a VR headset, or if you just want to pull this up on your device, on your cell phone, then all you have to do is move your phone around. If you want to go to the right, just turn it to the right, to the left, and so on and so forth, and you can navigate that way. So this is a really unique feature that we're really excited to bring to you. 360 cam in James Earl Ray's cell, and here in just a moment we'll tell you why in more depth James Earl Ray's name is connected to this story and why it is such an important piece of this story, and the fear of James Earl Ray's name being one of those who were involved in the pay for pardon scandal. In other words, somebody who was paying to get back on the streets, why that was such an integral part in stopping this scandal. So with that, I will leave you for this next portion of A Tennessee Waltz.
Inauguration is set for January the 20th.
The week of Lamar Alexander's inauguration, scheduled for Saturday, January 20th, 1979. Word circulated that Governor Blanton had intentions to release dangerous prisoners at the center of the parole for pay scandal. Whispers spread that Monday that top Republicans and Democrats thought Alexander should be sworn in early to stop it.
And it was that night that Governor Blanton drove down to the Capitol, 7 o'clock at night, called in the Secretary of State, and pardoned 52 people or issued commutations, including Roger Humphreys, many of whom the FBI believed had paid cash for their release.
With only 4 days left in office, Blanton stunned the state with a middle-of-the-night announcement that he had granted executive clemency to another 52 prisoners, including 26 murderers.
His 99-year sentence for first-degree murder commuted by Governor Ray Blanton.
Paperwork had been signed that night in an extraordinary after-hours signing session in the governor's office.
Earlier in the day, they had prepared commutation papers for 33 inmates serving time in Tennessee prisons. The papers awaited only the governor's signature.
It was a surprising move. I mean, he did this at midnight. I mean, it went national.
In one of his last acts as governor of Tennessee, Ray Blanton, a target of a federal investigation of an alleged parole-selling scheme, has cut the sentences of a number of murderers and other convicts.
A lot of these folks have been convicted of serious crimes, murder, rape, in some cases, multiple murders.
34 were granted without the approval of the Pardons and Paroles Board.
Incoming Governor Lamar Alexander called the pardon sickening and said Blanton's latest actions were a disgrace to the office.
That's when, the stuff on these board of pardons and paroles go, no, they can't. They can't do that. But by gosh, they did.
The most controversial of the latest group of prisoners to be freed is Roger Humphreys, the son of a former Blanton patronage chief.
My gut reaction to the Humphreys release was that it was sickening, that it was disgraceful to the office of governor and contemptuous to the people of the state.
Both father and son say they want the murderer of Susan Garrett Humphreys to serve the prison time meted out by the jury that convicted him.
Governor Blanton said he could look our family in the eye and say there was nothing wrong with what he was doing, and I'd like him to.
It was amazing. It was amazing. Nobody ever thought that he'd do that, go that far.
Acting on the excuse of relieving overcrowded conditions in the prisons, to pardon and commute the sentences of over 50 inmates earlier this week, especially Roger Humphreys.
It was like tossing a match in a can of gasoline to this scandal.
It looked like he might have done that because he thought I might take office early, and he was obligated to let some of those people out.
Did you sign any papers tonight?
Sure did.
How many?
I would guess about 52.
Commutation papers.
Part of them are pardons, part of them are commutations, and part of them are time served cuts.
It was close to the end of his term, and the governor just had the gall not only to do that, but to announce it, to let it be known.
Half hour after Governor Blanton began reviewing commutation papers, Secretary of State Gentry Crowell arrived at the Capitol. He told me that the governor had called him at home and asked him to come to Capitol Hill because he planned to sign some papers.
Blanton could, if he so chose, let a whole bunch of people out of prison for all the wrong reasons.
So I'd asked the State Attorney General, Bill Each, I said, tell me what the Constitution says about pardons. Can they be revoked? He said, no. Once they're done, they're done. The governor has the absolute authority. And I said, could he empty the entire prison? He said, yes.
Blanton was considering other unapproved releases. 5 of those possibilities involved inmates who are being investigated by federal authorities in connection with the alleged clemency buying scandal.
On Tuesday, it all blew up. And still, I was hoping it went away.
And he says he is not through yet.
I don't want to discuss cases with you. They'll be on record and they'll be on file.
There were more clemencies coming. There were more questionable acts out of this governor's office.
What are you going to be doing?
Tending to a little work.
With your legal counsel and C. Mary Henderson, are you going to be signing any commutations tonight?
Well, that remains to be seen.
Blanton's attorney, Robert Lillard, announced that the governor was planning to pardon more people, including one big name, he said.
There's a promise of a really big payday. There's a real big commutation they're going to ask for.
Some people speculated that might be James Earl Ray, who is in prison for killing Martin Luther King.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
I just want to do God's will. America is shocked and saddened by the brutal slaying tonight of Dr. Martin Luther King.
They had good reason to worry James Earl Ray could be set free. Part of the FBI's investigation was with an undercover informant in a Memphis motel room with Blanton bodyguard and Tennessee Highway Patrol Lieutenant Fred Taylor, seeing how far they were willing to go.
It was an incredible conversation if you listen to the tape. I mean, how much money would this one cost and how much money would that one cost?
They took a break and smoked a cigarette, and outside said, all right, let's see how far we can push them.
Let's see how far these guys will go.
Who is the baddest person in our state prison?
Let's ask him about James Earl Ray, who kills Martin Luther King. How much would it cost to get Ray out? And the trooper kind of taken aback by that, and he said something to the effect of, damn, that's a hot one. Now, I don't know if the governor can commute his sentence, but maybe for $75,000 we could arrange for an escape. And that shows you how far they would go.
Nobody doubted that something got to be done.
Governor Ray Blanton was intending to commute the sentences or pardon persons who were the target of the federal investigation.
The day that all this came together, if you will, was January 17th.
Governor Blanton was about to release from custody some prisoners who were the subject of a federal grand jury investigation that is taking place now. And
I got to work early. I was just walking the hallways thinking about this case because it was not only on my mind, it was a national issue. It was an embarrassment. It was a scandal. It was just like we were spinning out of control.
With time working against them, U.S. Attorney Hal Hardin sat in his office with FBI agents who told him there was a new list of inmates who were willing to pay or had already paid for their release, whose clemency papers were being drawn up.
He said, look, he says he's got 13 commutations and pardons that are being typed up, getting ready to go, and he's going to sign those very quickly. And some of them, one or two of them, were subjects that we were investigating.
we're coming down to the wire at the end of the administration for Blanton. He's already issued a bunch of these commutations. Now the word is he's going to do some more.
Blanton was considering other unapproved releases. 5 of those possibilities involved inmates who are being investigated by federal authorities.
It developed that James Earl Ray, was not, but people didn't know that he wasn't involved. He could have been, and he had tried to escape once before.
That infamous escape was with notorious bank robber Larry Hacker, a man Agent Knudsen had chased for years and even had a near-deadly confrontation with him and his gang.
They had the firepower and sat there and talked about whether they were going to shoot us through the door. We dealt with people who had killed other people, so they were dangerous.
Hardin and the FBI got word that the big name set to be released was not James Earl Ray, but Larry Hacker, with a $50,000 price tag for freedom. The FBI believed Sisk and Taylor agreed it would be too risky to ask the Pardon and Paroles Board to approve his release, so instead requested a blank commutation form and had the governor's appointments secretary, Kenneth Lavender, sign Ray Blanton's name on the signature line. Taylor was allegedly overheard saying, "We're working 7 or 8 deals like this, but it could be as many as 30 who get out."
With Governor Blanton's promise to pardon at least 6 other inmates before he leaves office Saturday, there is most likely going to be a lot more reaction.
With just 3 days until Inauguration Day, they all knew the papers could be signed at any moment.
And so that's when we go, hey, I've got to get this stopped. We don't need more people out there being commuted.
How sure are you and how sure is the FBI about everything that you're telling me? And he said, I'm absolutely sure, and we're absolutely sure. I said, okay. And he got up to leave, and he said, and what the hell are you going to do about it? And I said, you don't want to know.
The FBI has filed affidavits with a federal grand jury saying that Governor Ray Blanton either had knowledge of or participated in a scheme in the governor's office to sell pardons to state prisoners.
I decided that I was just going to call tomorrow.
The call was urging the incoming governor to consider taking office 3 days early, their best chance to stop dangerous criminals from paying to get back on the streets.
What I thought was, I'm not going to do that. That's not the way we do things in our country. I mean, we're not a banana republic. We don't have coups. The most unique thing about our country, about our democracy in many ways, is the peaceful transfer of power with grace from one party to another. That's the way our country works. I've never heard of a newly elected person just taking office. I can't do that.
In no circumstances was I eligible to take office until midnight last night, and all of the deeds had been done by that.
It just progressed until the time that, we decided we had to do something about it.
And so I set about spending the entire afternoon trying to think about how can we accomplish this coup in a way that's most appropriate. What's never been done before in our country, so far as I know.
Coming up, a day of secret meetings to stop a new list of murderers from getting set free that night. A coup could end the scandal for good or bring even more trouble to Tennessee.
Blanton was considering other unapproved releases.
Time is running out. We don't have any time. We've got to do this.
This is the kind of thing where 50 things can go wrong and 49 of them probably will.
The first Tennessee governor ever to be stripped of his powers.
God help us if we're wrong in what we're doing here.
I'm ashamed for the state of Tennessee for this action today.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back, and thanks for being with us today for this special live screening of A Tennessee Waltz, Ray Blanton's Last Dance. We are coming close to the end of our story now, and before we wrap up, I want to point your attention to a special landing page that we have created for you specific to this story. So if you haven't seen it yet, there is a lot of information on here. So what you do is you just go to WVLT.tv, and you're going to look for this tab right here in the center. It says Tennessee Waltz, and then it's going to pull up this page that looks like this, and it is pretty extensive. So I want to show you how to use this so you don't get confused and you know all of the resources that you have. If you're interested in this story, you can explore much more than what we were able to bring you in this documentary. So, of course, all of these little nuggets here will take you directly to that portion of the page where you can experience lots of different pieces here. You can watch the entire story without any commercials, without any breaks, right here straight through, either on your computer or on your phone. You can do it either way. A couple teases that we have here. We also have this function here where you can stream it if you prefer to stream it. And then also this here, this is kind of fun. We created a podcast. So if you want to take us on the road or anywhere where you listen to podcasts, you have the ability to do that. It's under the same name, Tennessee Waltz, Ray Blanton's Last Dance. And then of course, all of these original pictures that we were able to collect for you. There's a lot of pictures sprinkled throughout the story. And then the copy here where you can sit down and read deeper into the story if you choose. But I want to point your attention to anytime that you see a piece that is underlined, this hyperlink is going to take you into a deeper version of that piece of the story. So if there's something that you find interesting here, then you can dig in even deeper. We did more research for you that just was too long to fit in this portion of the copy. So you'll see several of them as you continue to scroll down. Again, more original pictures. And here we saw a nugget of Ray Blanton sitting down with WSMV, our station in Nashville, sat down for this one-on-one exclusive interview. We have the entire interview for you here. We were only able to break that up into some pieces in the documentary, but you can view the entire piece. It's quite contentious. You can see that there if you choose. And then more pieces of content, original pictures, things that we were able to find and create for you throughout the collection of this story. This here is the indictment. You can read where several people are charged in connection to the pay for pardon scandal. You can see exactly what those charges are and why they're being charged here. So that's the full indictment you can see there. And then this piece here, this is part of the never published before audio recordings of Aubrey Thompson, Fred Taylor, who is admitting to the scheme for the first time to the FBI, all caught on original audio tapes released for the very first time in this story. That's Fred Taylor, who was serving as Ray Blanton's bodyguard at the time, admitting his portion of the crime and why he says he did it. This is new piece here. We found this at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, where James Earl Ray etched his name into the wall. This is his inmate number and the date where he carved that into the wall that's preserved there at Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary, which is now turned into a distillery, so a visitor center where you can go and explore. Some pictures that we have collected here, and I'm kind of scrolling through this quickly because there is so much information that you can navigate on your own, but it's easy to lose sight of it if you're not really taking some time to dive in. This is the full swearing-in ceremony that you'll see further in the next portion of this story. And then Ray Blanton, as you'll learn here in just a minute, was charged with other crimes, and we found the indictment there that you can read more about, some other figures and information that we're going to reveal to you in this next part of the story, and then a lot of other pieces of information with where people are now and what they went on to do in their career and in their life. And if you're not adding in any questions or comments within this Facebook Live, then you're free to do that at any portion right there. More behind the scenes, more extras that we've collected for you, a little bit more on the research process, and we conclude here with more on where you can stream, where you can listen, and then those in-depth stories. So quite a bit there. Just wanted to point that out and show you how to navigate that homepage, as there's a lot to unpack just in that, but it's all fun and exciting, and if you're interested in this content, then I think you're really going to enjoy all the pieces that we were able to pull together in one place for you. So with that, I will leave you now as we wrap up with the final portion of A Tennessee Waltz, Ray Blanton's Last Dance.
Governor Blanton is about to release one or more persons from prison who are targets of the United States investigation into alleged payoffs for pardons and commutations of sentences.
That Wednesday afternoon, a small handful of attorneys, including Hal Hardin and Lamar Alexander, spent hours locked in a hotel room in downtown Nashville, secretly scheming how to legally oust their Democratic governor and replace him with a Republican.
All of this came about very, very suddenly after a day of secret meetings between the House Speaker and the Lieutenant Governor and the U.S. Attorney and the State Attorney General.
This is the kind of thing where 50 things can go wrong, and 49 of them probably will.
Of course, all of this is aimed at preventing former Governor Ray Blanton from releasing any other state prisoners.
What is the law involved in it, and how right are we? And there was a lot of arguments about the law.
Is it constitutional? If it's constitutional, is it the right thing to do?
At midnight Tuesday, Alexander was eligible to take the oath of office, although there was some uncertainty about that.
What's going to happen if we are wrong? I mean, God help us if we're wrong in what we're doing here. This is not going to play well in Peoria.
The possibility that targets of the federal investigation might be released from prison.
I just came to the conclusion, I said, look, we can debate this forever, but time is running out. We don't have any time. We got to do this or X is going to happen. Let's do it. And if we're wrong, then the courts will tell us you were wrong and you shouldn't have done it. And we'll take the medicine that way. But let's go do it and get it over with. And that's what we did.
It is in the best interest of the people of Tennessee for the governor-elect to assume that office immediately. Mr. Chief Justice, I am ready to take the oath of office.
Please place your left hand upon the Bible. Raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Lamar Alexander was sworn in that Wednesday night, 3 days before he was scheduled to take office, in a very small ceremony surrounded by his family, a few state leaders, and the press.
So help me God.
So help me God.
It was like a funeral.
There was nothing satisfying about this. There was no dancing in the end zone.
These are not very happy days for Tennessee. This is not a happy day for me.
It was very somber. It was like being at a funeral parlor after a death where nobody knows what to say to one another. And I knew that even though I wasn't the governor yet, I had to be in charge.
The Governor Blanton was about to let out of a state prison one or more persons who were the targets of a grand jury investigation into alleged payoffs in connection with pardons and paroles.
Just as Alexander raised his right hand and placed his left on the Bible to take the oath of office, Blanton was told the news. He'd been kicked out and replaced as governor.
I'm ashamed for the state of Tennessee for this action today.
Although the former governor was ashamed for Tennessee, his removal was brought about because many lawmakers and Tennesseans were ashamed of Ray Blanton.
That, along with Blanton's threats to release more prisoners, resulted in his unprecedented removal from power, almost in involuntary exile.
Thank you, folks.
The first Tennessee governor ever to be stripped of his powers.
I think everybody involved felt like, at the end of the day, this is what we had to do, and we did it.
We had some really tough Democrats, all of them, who rose to the occasion and did something they thought was the right thing to do for their state. And true to their word, stood right up there with me and didn't backpedal an inch.
We now have a new governor in the state of Tennessee. Governor Lamar Alexander is no longer the governor-elect. He has been sworn in early, as he explained it.
One of the best phone calls I've ever received in my life was later on that night. The FBI agent called me from the governor's office and said, "You'd be glad to know that the information that I told you about, those names and everything, I got a list of them. Here they are. We were right. It's spot on." So there wasn't any question after that.
And we went up their way, then here's this on this desk is a stack of commutations that waiting for Blanton's signature. So we thwarted that. We felt, everybody felt good about that.
Blanton was considering other unapproved releases. 5 of those possibilities involved inmates who are being investigated by federal authorities in connection with the alleged clemency buying scandal.
Ray Blanton never forgave, he never forgot, and he never recovered from this.
Ray Blanton was never charged in the cash for clemency scandal, but in 1984, he was convicted of mail fraud and extortion for selling liquor licenses. He served 22 months in prison.
Governor Blanton tolerated a system of abuse and corruptness and illegality. Whether he got cash for pardons and paroles, I have no idea.
There was inferences that the governor did know about it and was involved, but I don't think so. I really don't. I think that he didn't care.
It's hard to imagine he couldn't have known about it. Maybe he didn't.
Well, I think it's unfair to say that he did. I mean, there's no proof, actual proof.
I actually went up and met with him and told him. And when I left, I felt sick at the pit of my stomach because I thought, there's something wrong with this picture. I realized he knew.
When were these pictures?
It was the day of the inauguration. That was the early swearing in.
There are things in life time helps us forget.
It certainly was no fun, and I mean, like for 30 years, none of us even talked about it because it's like one of those things, going to war or whatever, you just don't talk about those things.
So we didn't talk about it. We worked on schools and roads and politics and whatever else we had to do. That we put that behind us and just didn't talk about it.
Then there are the things time makes sure we remember.
It keeps coming back, though. It's something.
But one thing time helps us understand is why.
We found a way to work together in those 3 or 4 hours that lasted for the entire 8 years that I served.
Lamar Alexander and all these Democrats got together and showed how they could work together.
You know, how I got sworn in was an accident. It wasn't an accomplishment. Now, it was an accomplishment to do it as well as we did it.
this wraps up our special live screening of A Tennessee Waltz, Ray Blanton's Last Dance. Thank you for sending in your questions. Remember, you can always do that right here on Facebook. You can also do that through the special landing page that we created for this story specifically. There is a feature where you can submit your questions or your own stories about this time in history, and we will respond to you. You can always stream this story. You can listen to the podcast, and we encourage you to do that. Thank you so much for your support and your interest in the story. We certainly hope that you have enjoyed it as much as we have as we wrap up now our special screening of A Tennessee Waltz, Ray Blanton's Last Dance. Thanks for joining us.